and thank you for coming. Just have a few minutes for some questions or any comments that anybody has, rather than me making an opening statement. It was basically said out there in the hall. So, yes.
Governor, Sharon Bowback, Voice of a Moderate. How do you see the Republican Party reaching out to the women that are independent voters? Just give me your vision.
Yeah, I think the key thing is to affirm that the equality of women is an absolute, that we believe that women are capable of anything that men are capable of. The best way that we can do it is prove it by how we have lived our lives and how we have governed in the case of which we've served in office. And having appointed more women to high-level positions in state government, where I came from, than any other governor in my state's history, including Bill Clinton, I think that speaks pretty loudly. My chief of staff was a woman, so many of my key appointments were, because I believe that there shouldn't be a gender difference in terms of serving. I like to see more women get elected to office, more women appointed, more women serving, because they represent a little more than half the population. They shouldn't be a fraction of those who serve in a representative body of Congress.
Hey, Governor, Joe Struck from Media Matters. You had sent out some emails through Newsmax, some promotional sponsored emails for a Alzheimer's cure that had been found to be misleading. Scott Brown, as you know, maybe he had distanced himself from those. What's your thought on that being tied to your name?
Well, just always read the disclosure and the disclaimer that is a part of the messages. You know, we are simply the conduit to send messages. They are sponsored, and I can't always vouch for the veracity and each individual consumer, and that's what the disclaimer clearly says in each of them. Yes?
Hi, Paige McPherson from Sun News Network in Canada. A lot of people in Canada are wondering, why President Obama is dragging his feet so much on Keystone Pipeline. Do you think that it's ever going to be approved, and why do you think he's dragging his feet like this?
It may not as long as he's president, but we hope in a few years to fix that. And then the Keystone should come in. I mean, there's no reason why it shouldn't. Even Democrats generally agree. Because America ought to fuel itself. We ought not to be fueled by countries around the world who don't like us and in fact can't stand us and take the obscene profits they make from our money that we buy their energy and turn around and build madrasas with it to train people to kill us. That makes no sense to me. What makes sense is to develop the extraordinary natural resources that we have in this country that are plenteous to us, that would last us for hundreds of years, and to provide some of that wealth to Americans, create those jobs for people here. And we don't mind if a few of the jobs go to some of the folks in Canada too. As long as it's not Rob Ford, that's the only thing we might want. Yes, sir.
Then I'm going to come over. From Norway today. There's a lot of talk about the division within the Republican Party. How big is it in your opinion, and how you want to bring the party together?
There's always divisions in the parties. That's sort of normal. I think typically the divisions end once the nomination process closes in. That'll be true in 2014. Right now you have some very bitter primaries going on. But what I hope Republicans will understand, and conservatives in a more general and broad way, is that the differences between those of us who are conservative is very, very minor compared to the differences between all of us collectively and those on the far left who have been governing this country for the past 5 years. And what we need to begin to focus on is not the small differences, but the huge differences and the results that we've seen as because of that. Ed?
Thank you, Governor. In this election cycle we're going to be coming up on, obviously Obamacare is going to be a big part of that, but there's questions about what the Republican economic agenda should be, because obviously jobs and the economy are two of the biggest priorities for voters. Mm-hmm. What we had an economic agenda in 2012. What would you suggest Republicans do to improve that message and to build an economic agenda that people can get behind?
I think most Americans know that you can't spend money you don't have and borrow money you can't afford to pay back. I mean, that's their life. They can't do that. So they assume that their government shouldn't do that, even though the government has been doing that and has run up a $17.4 trillion debt. So the common sense approach that we should say to Americans is, look, we're going to have to put a hiatus on new spending. We're going to freeze it. Then we're going to start cutting it back. We look at a figure. Is it 1? Is it 5? Is it 10%? My experience, even as a governor, when we cut 11% out of our state budget during a recession in 2002, 2003, was that, everybody at first thought, well, this will be the end of the world. Well, it wasn't. It wasn't the end of the world. Some people thought that the solution was simply adding a new tax. I didn't think that was the solution, especially at a time of recession. So I created what was called a Tax Me More Fund. I said, you really want to pay more taxes? Do you really? Are you serious? Because my experience is that most people say that they want it until it turns that it's going to come out of their pocket. And so I carry envelopes around addressed to the Tax Me More Fund. We actually established an account at the state government. And so everywhere I'd go, I'd say, anybody would like to pay more taxes, you feel guilty because you're not paying enough. There's nothing in the law that prohibits you from paying more. So I'm going to just hold up an envelope. Anybody that wants one, let me know. You'd be amazed how few of those envelopes I gave away in 2 years. And after 2 years, $1,183 total had been collected. So I came to the conclusion that just to put the money in the general pot was not something that people favored. People, I think, are willing to pay for things if they think the government is going to do something smart with it. If we said, look, we've got to take better care of our veterans. We're going to dedicate X amount of money to this. Americans would be for that. I think there are certain areas, maybe not at the federal level, but at the state level, where people, if they want better schools, better neighborhoods, better parks, better roads, they'll vote for that, and they'll pay for it. But the idea that we're just going to give the government more money to continue to do what it has been doing, which is waste a big bunch of it, and not be accountable for the rest of it, is unacceptable. And Americans, I don't think, are opposed to tightening the belt of government, because they doggone sure have been tightening their own. Yes, sir.
Governor, speaking of Republican divisions, Dave Weigel from Slate, the conflict in the Crimea, is that a challenge to the more anti-interventionist, Ron and Rand Paul wing of the Republican Party? Should they have to...
No, I don't think it's a matter of rift within the Republican circles. Really, what it represents as much as anything is the realities that we are not in a strong position to have much influence. I mean, the reality is there's not much we can do. People say, what can the president do? The real question is, what should the country have been doing for the past 5 years that it wasn't doing, which was building up a level of respect and trust, and yes, even a level of fear. People don't take those kind of actions if they fear repercussions, whether they're economic or military. And I don't think anybody has suggested a military intervention over this. I see no basis for that. But what do we bring to the table as a result of 5 years of a foreign policy that is at best schizophrenic? There is a red line. Well, not really. Really wasn't my red line anyway. It was somebody else's red line. Oh, well, we're not going to be for Mubarak in Egypt. We're going to go with the Muslim Brotherhood until they get overthrown. And then we may still go with them, but we may go with al-Sisi. But then again, we may not. And so now Putin has picked them off, and they're his ally, not ours. We've made blunder after blunder. We've eased up sanctions in Iran. We've made it easier for them to continue doing exactly what they want to do, go unimpeded toward building a bomb. They're dancing in the streets and laughing in our faces. And what have we gotten in return for? Anything. Nothing. Nothing tangible whatsoever. Yes?
Hey, there's a dynamic discussion going on in the Republican Party.
I'm not party to any dynamic discussion, so...
It looks like they're going to keep the House, but the Senate is still up for play.
Yeah.
What is it that Republicans need to do to actually win elections in the Senate?
They've got to communicate to the working class people of America that the message of economic freedom, security, is one that is going to lift their boat. I don't think people at the very top are going to be moving one way or the other. Frankly, people at the top, left or right, always make money. They always do, right? That's why people will support Barack Obama, who are hardcore Democrats, or even Republicans will support him, because they feel like they're going to figure out a way to make money. But the people who work lifting heavy things, who come home really tired from work and having sweated through their clothes, those are the people who aren't doing better today. They're doing worse. Their jobs don't pay as much. They have to work more hours. Their benefits have been cut. In some cases, their pay has been cut. And somewhere, we've got to make sure that people understand that we can't tax our way to make their lives better, that we have to see an economy grow. And if we could just grow the economy at least 4%, then we'd start getting out of this deep hole of debt that we're in that makes it even more difficult because we're paying so much money to the Chinese to pay off the debt rather than to do the things that actually builds a better life for Americans. So the nutshell is, let's not fight each other. Let's fight the real war. And the fight is not to tell everybody how bad the Democrats are. It's to tell everybody how great America is when America functions like America was designed to function, which is a nation where free enterprise is free and where people can speak freely. And everybody doesn't nitpick every word somebody says, and that we don't get handed a lexicon of what we can and cannot say within the political discourse. I think that's very negative. Yes?
Hi, Governor.
Hi.
You referenced Hillary Clinton in your remarks. To what degree is she a part of the conversation here at CPAC? and given your common Arkansas roots and many overlapping
Yeah.
friends, are you in a disadvantaged position at all if she were the nominee in 2016?
A disadvantage? The
Because
fact that I would
you
know her
already
better
had-
than anyone else? Probably not.
To what degree is she a part of the conversation?
Well, I think if the Democrats want to continue to say that she is by far and away the front runner and that she's the likely nominee, if she is the standard bearer for the Democratic message, and she's the one that the Democratic Party are going to rally around, and her record are the primary point at which they're going to say, elect us, then you bet she's a part of the discussion. She has to be, because of that very nature.
Governor, can I follow up on that?
Sure.
On, you talked
Zane, get me right this time, okay? Don't tweet us.
we always get things right. Thank you for that.
All right.
The, Hillary Clinton, you specifically talked about Benghazi.
Yeah.
Obviously, that is a rallying cry for the conservative.
No, I think
base.
it's a rallying cry for every American who's concerned about why 4 Americans were murdered, and we didn't send anybody in there to at least attempt to rescue them.
So you really think that's going to be a potential Achilles heel for her on a national level in a general election, not just among
God help us if it isn't.
Republicans?
Because if we can see an ambassador murdered and 3 other Americans who tried to defend and protect them, and we have yet to have a rational explanation as to why we didn't scramble some type of effort to go in and save them and rescue them, and why we have not been able to create one arrest in that. People can sit out, drink coffee at Starbucks, and can be identified by a major television network as having participated, but we've not yet apprehended that person. I think that's problematic, and I think Americans ought to care about that. If they don't, then I'd wonder, why do they not care about it? Because that's an affront not to just one ambassador. He represents every other American. And an attack upon an ambassador, an attack upon an embassy or a consulate, is really an attack upon American soil. Yes. Yes, you were loud, so I'll give you, which now invites a lot more loud questions, so go ahead.
As you know, Senator Rand Paul has called Bill Clinton a sexual predator, and he's brought up, all the old Monica Lewinsky stories. Is that an appropriate part of the dialogue for Republicans to be having in this next campaign?
I'm not going to speak to what other people will say or not say, because I'm sure there are a lot of things I've said that people wished I hadn't have said. There's a few things I've said that I wished I hadn't have said
Should
too.
that be part of the conversation?
But here's my thing. Bill Clinton is not going to be on the ballot in 2016 or 2014. It's very possible that his wife will. What she said, what she did, how she has served both as a senator